Meeting is being recorded.
Bring them into our mind. So, in other words, what we experience outside, in other words, the incidents, they come into our mind. In other words, these things become part of our mind. Similarly, our mind goes into outside events, people, etc. For example, if the mind is already agitated and if we see someone, our mind goes to that and start thinking about the past, what happened. So in that way, there is a complex connection between our mind and what goes around outside. And many times it looks like a best fit, the mind and the emotions, or whatever happens outside and our mind. That's why if you are talking about any kinds of emotions, and especially if you are talking about negative emotions, how to take it out, that becomes complex. And that's why there have been a lot of studies, discussions, etc. about this one point. Sometimes we may think, why is it so? Why can't we just let go? And it doesn't happen just with a mental adjustment. Mind you, unlike other emotions, let's consider positive emotions and negative emotions. Negative emotions has some weight on our mind. I'll just show you a slide that will make us a bit more sense, and you could about negative emotions now. Yeah, you can see the slide wherein you can see the red ball is a negative emotion and the green ones are positive. So what do you have to say? What do you infer from this image? So it's a question for all. You can share. What do you infer from this?
So you have more green balls than red balls, and then you're good.
I think what it
So that is one way of looking at it. Good. Anything further?
what it says is one negative emotion can overtake three positives. Just one bad thought or one bad thing in your life will sort of give away the other good things that you have. The weight of negative emotion is too much.
Yes.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Anyone
Negative
else?
plus negative and positive is equal to negative.
Okay. It depends on how you read it.
For me, I'm wondering whether it's just how we perceive it. We tend to spend probably more time on, or we get impacted by negative things a little bit more than, and then we tend to sort of ignore some of the positive things that are happening, or we don't look at it or spend as much time thinking about the positive things. So it may seem this way.
Yes. So thank you for the inputs. There's a lot of meaning to it. There have been a lot of studies done on negative emotions, and the main point comes is negative emotions are more impressionable than positive emotions. As some of you pointed out, that the negative emotions stay in the mind more than the positives. Just like a scar. It's just one scar, but it stands out. So generally, the negative emotions can stand out in one's life. Maybe everything went well, but still one thing, we are just hanging on to that. In other words, we may just focus on one facet of our life which is negative. That is the normal tendency of the mind. So many of the social scientists, they conclude that negative emotions are generally more impressionable. So we need to deal with them carefully. There have been many studies, very interesting studies about this.
So
This is called aversion.
Parminder is right. That means so the negative emotion, the one red ball can sort of overweigh 3 green balls. It's so, or yeah. So I'm getting the point that. So
Exactly, I agree with that. That's right. So the one negative carries more weight. We could experience in our own lives such kind of stuff. And there has been a study, and this is a very hot topic in terms of research, not just in psychology, but application of psychology in economics. It is known as behavioral economics. It's a top-notch research area. Daniel Kahneman, he got Nobel Prize for his studies, understanding the psychology behind, the social psychology behind consumption, how people spend money, and utilizing that for, of course, for economic financial gains. But it's a big field in itself. I will not get into some examples in that because that will take away more time. But if you have time later, we can talk about it. But in essence, it is more impressionable. Just a question for you. Do you have any particular negative emotions that we need to deal with?
Well, there's always stuff.
Yes.
Negative emotions tend to be more personal, I think. I think people don't like sharing negative emotions, and if they did, it would probably be much better, because once you share your negative emotion, it becomes neutral almost. Shared problem is a no is well, it's halfway to solve the problem once you share it. But in my experience, most negative emotions tend to be personal, and people kind of reluctant to discuss those. So
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I don't want to get into the details of it, but generally stress and anxiety, yes, something we had to deal with.
yeah, for sure.
Sometimes, yeah, that's right. We will generalize it. I don't want to get into each and every one, into what are the negative emotions you're feeling. No, but general stuff. Resentment at times, yes. Sometimes we feel down. What are we doing? Are we achieving things? So in that way, we can see different kinds of negative emotions which are common to our own life. In these negative emotions, the first commonalities we try to discuss, first thing is we start worrying. Over and over. I remember the story of Victor. Something to share?
Yeah, I was just, I think you mentioned that last session that we had, that people tend to worry about things that never happen.
Exactly, that's right.
Yeah, so that's the biggest one for most people, I think, me including.
It is just like you think you're driving, you go to probably a grassy area and your car's tire gets stuck. You try to raise the car, but it is the wheel is revolving, it's rotating, but you're making an emotion. Our mind is like that. We get stuck to certain kind of thoughts and just reeling, and it's not going anywhere. Just like a rocking chair. Worrying is like a rocking chair where you can rock the chair as much as you want, but you're not making it any. It's pretty much a spiral of negativity. That's where the problem with worrying. It is not leading us anywhere. And last time we discussed about 97% of the things either do not happen, or we could deal with them in a much better way than we thought about. So this is quite positive if we think about it. So we don't need to really worry about that, but the nature of the mind is that it just revolves around. And one important aspect is there. Say, take the example of a satellite that revolves around the Earth. What's actually keeping that trajectory? What is that keeping that connection? What is that connection in terms of the satellite and the Earth? That is, we could call the gravitational force, or it's an electromagnetic force. So there is a kind of link between these two. Similarly, when it comes to a worry and ourselves, why this mind is revolving around that, there is a link. So that link is our attachment that we develop. About an event, about a person, an incident, whatever, we develop that an attachment, and once we have that attachment, then we have emotions for that. We can clearly see that. For example, if I have no attachment to a particular person, I don't even know him or her, or I may just know him, something happens, doesn't affect me. But as soon as we have an attachment, then we can see that we develop emotions. And in stress and anxiety, what happens? We get to a point, we think it's better, and I can't focus on anything in my life, even though I have many other things to worry about. In other words, I had to focus on. Shit, I can't. This just one worry is just rotating. So I can't calm myself at all. So this is the nature of this worrying mechanism. When it comes to resentment, we are practically thinking about that one thing he or she did to me, or he or she told me, and our mind is just thinking about it. So it happened in the past, but we are bringing it to the present, and we are just thinking and thinking. So this is one aspect of worrying, because it is a major issue. We generate three things. One is we bring our past to the present and we worry about it. Second, we misrepresent our present as well as the future. Things may not be going bad in all circumstances, in all facets of our life, but we pick a certain things and then we worry about it and we forget about the rest. And we add our imagination to it to worsen it. In other words, we are misrepresenting our present. And about the future, as we discussed in the past, we worry about the future, which is not really going to happen, or if it happens, we could handle them in a better way. So our mind is dealing with three states. One is the past, one is the present, and the future. And the present and the future, it is misrepresenting. So this is the problem with the mind. So in essence, we are pushing aside the present. For present, we can do something about the present. We can make best out of the present, but we're going to push aside the present. And other positive aspects of our life, we are just negating and just focusing on just one thing. So this can be, most of the time, it can be quite draining. Generally, it is draining. Definitely it is draining. I'll just show this slide, which is essentially what we spoke. So one we discussed about the past, present, the future, and this the main issue is it is stealing the present. We need to be quite concerned about it, because the action of control is in the present and we are losing it. And trapped in one of the many facets of our life. We have other aspects of our life, not just one. And finally, this could be a major problem that is very disempowering, and we feel helpless in this kind of situation. This is one thing we need to be careful, that never think that no one can help us. That kind of a thought can be quite bad for our own self. So we had to be quite careful when we're dealing with our emotions, and especially when you're dealing with the negative emotions, that we can definitely get help, and which we may need at times, and we should be shy about it. Moving on, if you have further reflections on negative emotions, and by the way, anyone has any questions or any comments so far?
I do have a question as usual, Gopa, and you can't avoid my question. So I guess the bigger thing that's on my mind. So how do we? So the bigger thing is how do we stop? It's easy to say don't worry about things that haven't happened, and so how do you actually do that? That's the question. How do
We
you
haven't
force
come to that yet. Okay, we will come to the solution. We haven't yet there. We are trying to understand what's happening.
Yeah, no problem.
We're reflecting ourselves, we are seeing what's really going on in our mind. So we will do a little bit more analysis of the situation, okay? So yes, what we are really trying to do, if you think I'm at fault, I did this mistake, I have made wrong decision, or that went wrong, or this went wrong. Essentially, what we are trying to do is we are trying to whip ourselves with the coils, and the coils of worries are giving us pain. In other words, we are not really showing compassion to ourselves, rather we are torturing our unnecessarily. When we are worrying, we are giving pain to ourselves. So be clear, we are not meant to do that for ourselves. So at least be clear. Don't think, there are people who think this is a good thing to worry about something. And in that way, they are making a solution, or we are just repenting. So people are taking different ways, but we say, look, come to the point, like there are mistakes, there are things went wrong, but now I'm unnecessarily giving pain to myself. So we need to be quite careful, even at this point in time when we may think I'm dissatisfied, things are not happening in my way, and I feel a bit depressed, I feel down. Try to understand currently the society is made up in such a way that if you feel dissatisfied, that's a norm. The whole ad industry is set in that way. If we have something, a gadget, get the latest. If we have the latest, okay, wait for 6 months, get the next. So we are trained to be dissatisfied. And we also get into the same loop. And we think, oh yeah, probably I'll be happier if I get the latest one. Yes, here we get it. As we discussed in the previous session, we be happy for some time, then again back to it. Right? So the world is working in this way, and we are part of it. It's not that we can just run away from it. It's mentioned when there are such expectations from others, oneself, and the entire society, one feels pressurized. And that is the worst time to deal with worries, because the mind is already perturbed, and on top of that, too much to handle. It was mentioned in one of those interesting studies. We may think that the kids who are from a wealthier family, the rich kids, one may think they may feel all right because they already have everything with them, so they may feel less pressure to deal with in their lives. Interestingly enough, the studies show that those who are rich, especially the rich kids, they are feeling more pressure, they are feeling more stress, they are feeling more anxiety, because they feel the expectations from the society, the expectations from their parents, relatives, friends are so high that they need to succeed and them to see successful, and that put a lot of pressure on them. So can you see how the system works? So in the society, we are naturally, we don't have a supportive lifestyle. We also succumb into a consumeristic model where we feel the external achievements is the source of happiness and satisfaction, and which isn't. Here I had to make a pause, and I had to make this point that in this kind of situations, when we feel unsatisfied, if we feel, okay, I have done the wrong things, okay, I have made mistakes, things are not going okay, we have to take a pause, reflect on our lives, and start counting things which we have done right. Count the blessings in our life. Count the things which are going okay in our lives. going through this situation, when they actually pause themselves, take a break and think, take a journal, write it down or type it down, they see, yes, there are many things which are going all right in my life, even though such and such things are not going okay. So this is a practical exercise we need to do. I have to make this point that in this time of isolation, it's a kind of a forced isolation. One may feel, yes, what's really going on? But we can really take advantage of this time. We can convert isolation into solitude, at least for some time. Because solitude is something we have to be sought for. Solitude is positive. It gives some opportunity to reflect. It gives some opportunity to relax. So yes, we are all working, busy, but of lockdown into solitude where we think, look, I have nothing to do now. This half an hour, 1 hour, let me just think what's really going on in my life, what's going good, what's not going good, what can I do about it? One, take a pause and think for ourselves. It really helps. I still remember we went on a retreat, took quite a few people, and one of the exercise, what we did, everyone just go to the nature, have your journal with you and a pen, just relax somewhere under a tree, wherever, and just think what's really going on in your life, what you want to do, what's really going on, what's going good, what's not going okay. Just write it down and just ease out. Don't try to solve all the problems. Just ease out for some time. So that is solitude. And many people said they really felt quite connected. If we have some time for ourselves, we don't feel lonely, rather we feel connected. We can feel more disconnected. That is loneliness. But being alone, it's really good for some time. We had to take opportunity, we had to make some time out of it. Yeah, I know, many people are with the family, so it's good to be in a room for some time, no work, no boss, no worry about anything, just relax, just take note of what's really going on. Important. That comes to the point. Our quality of our emotions are dependent on the quality of our desires. I repeat this point. The quality of our emotions are dependent on quality of our desires. Reflecting on the previous talk, if we are completely subscribing to this consumeristic society and their deals of happiness and success, stable. It's going to go up and down. It's going to go topsy-turvy. Because we are simply relying for our well-being, the external circumstances, external ups and downs, external success or failure, heat and cold, good day, bad day, rewards. So we are just basing ourselves on the externals for our internal satisfaction. In other words, we are taking wrong steps in terms of our desires. This is an important point. Our desires determine our emotions. So the quality of the desire can bring in quality of emotions and the quality of happiness. So think about this point. Isn't it true that in our society, just based on the externals, and when we get into it, our emotions are distorted. We have to deal with stress and anxiety. And what happens? No, we don't need any reasons to be dissatisfied. Many times that is a sad scenario I see. There's no real reasons to be dissatisfied. It becomes a natural course of action. It's the norm of the mind to be dissatisfied. As you said, we buy things in this society, things which we don't need, with the money we don't have, who we don't like. this kind of mentality is not going to really help. We have to watch out what are our real intentions, what are our quality of our desires. That can really help us. I'll move on to make another point in which we discussed a little bit last time. We generally make two mistakes when we deal with our emotions. And it is very common. I'll show you a slide. And this mistake is pointed out. So the mistake is here. We usually think it's all I am one. One mistake is I am the emotion. This is a misunderstanding that we have. When we have some emotions, immediately we think I am the emotions, I had to act upon them. Not necessarily. I am not the emotion. I am only an observer to the emotion. Just like Melbourne weather changes. If we simply identify with the weather, and if we base our happiness just on the weather, then of course it's going to be up and down. Second mistake we make is I can control the object of my emotion, which may not be the case in many of the times. So we had to be mindful that we cannot control the object of my emotions all the time. There are things which we can control within our control, but our objects of our emotion all the time. For example, weather. We can't change anything. So we have to live with that. So if you think, oh, I had to change everything, it may not be possible. There are things which you can change, and there are things which we cannot. Here, we are at a position where we think that, okay, what is the source of these emotions? It's coming from the mind. If I am not the emotion, then who am I? Here the ancient yoga classic text mentions, okay, we are not just the body, we are not just the mind, we are even beneath that. We are the witness to the whole emotional scene. And that's why we can go beyond it. I'll give some takeaways and then we'll have further discussion. As we discussed just before, work on what is within our control in the present. In the process of worrying, don't lose the present. So this is a conscious choice we had to do. It's a practice in itself. It's not just a knowledge. Don't think just with the knowledge one will be able to do it, but it needs some practice. So work on what is in our control. That will really help. Second, cultivate a perspective to distance from negative emotions. We just touched upon this point last week as well. You need to create that social distancing from the negative emotions. An experiment for this is you can just close your eyes and see what are the thoughts coming to your mind, the desires which are coming to your mind, and some are subsiding. Witness to the emotions of your mind, whether good or bad, wherein you can see you are a witness rather than being completely caught up in those emotions. So we need to cultivate that perspective to distance ourselves from the emotions, and that will help to work on the present rather than ruminating. So those who actually tried with this, they mentioned it takes some time. We know it takes a bit of time. It takes some conscious effort to work on our emotions and do something practical about it. Next, these two are very, very important. I'll speak a little bit about meditation and positive association. First, about meditation. Meditation is something like if you have a flight, you're catching a flight. Probably now the flights are not flying. What happens? You take off the flight and you go up high in the air, and if you look down, you can see all these big buildings have become now small, like matchboxes, just Legos, very small. The reason is we have gone away from those buildings, so they are looking very small. Similarly, in meditation, what happens? We are elevating our consciousness, and when we elevate our consciousness, the problems are there, or the worry points are there. Still, since our consciousness is elevated, they look small. They look within our reach, within so much. So this is a very important aspect of meditation, where we can elevate our consciousness, and that really helps. That's why many people are into meditation nowadays, and there are, of course, many kinds of meditations. Some are more advanced, some could be more preliminary, etc. So the meditation techniques, that really helps, and it is very positive because that is really taking us away from the problems, and it's giving a higher perspective, and this really helps. That's another important aspect of the meditation, is that it really helps us to create that distance from the negative emotions. I have tried myself personally as a monk. I do meditation for a couple of hours every day. And of course, I had negative emotions coming to my mind, and I had to deal with them. I remember many times if there are such kind of thoughts come, it's not that I just forgot about it, but I feel very joyful. So meditation is very powerful. So this is a very important part of it. And positive association. I think Victor mentioned sharing helps. Indeed, it is part of the story. The positive association in terms of understanding deeper about happiness, about our emotions, about meditation. These are all positive association, just like we are trying to do. That really helps us to go beyond this negative emotions, and it will give us the strength to deal with such kind of negative emotions. Finally, we mentioned this point. We had to positively try to count blessings in our life, positives in our lives. We may have to make a note to make it graphic. That we are not doing really bad. There are some things going wrong, but not everything is bad. And the mind, which is creating trouble, it is unnecessarily creating me trouble. So we get that perspective. If you are trying to deal with these negative emotions, it's a combination. It's not just a one-stop solution as such, but it's a combination of things that we need to deal with. So it's a cultivation. It's not, look, I just do this thing and that's about it. I'll say no to the mind all the time, it's not going to work. So it's a cultivation. So I would like to hear from you, then we can go further. We can have more discussion on any of the points, or I can try to answer your questions that you know.
Are there any techniques you can suggest, like you said, to distance yourself from negative emotions? Like any methods that you can recommend, or any, I don't know, any ways that people are successfully doing that? That's something I would be interested in.
Yes, I can tell my example, my experience to start with at least. In my experience, what helps me is meditation. Why it helps? It is helping me to get out completely from the current frame of reference I have. So my current worries are coming from my frame of references, which is throwing different things, and my perspectives are based on that. So I'm getting out from that, and in that way, I feel, oh, look, these things are just too small. I don't really need to worry about them. As I gave the example of the flight, as we are taking off, we understand, okay, it's small. So that is one way of dealing with it. Then we get that energy to deal with them in a very positive fashion. Second, alongside what people have tried, they take some time for solitude. They have some time off to free oneself from all this kind of stuff, at least for some time. Currently, what happens, many working people mention to me the problem that they're facing, at least initially when they started working from home. There are natural de-stressors when you go to work. For example, sometimes commuting, you think about something, you go for a break, you go for lunch, you talk to your friends. So there is some time when you're off the usual worries or you're just distracted from the worries, which is good. So many people mentioned when they sit at home and work, they all of them. And then just they had to deal with the work stress and whatever family and the relationship stress they had to deal with. So solitude and reflecting on our lives, it actually helps as well. So this we had to put some effort. Why I'm saying is if our car is stuck in the mud and the wheel is rolling and we cannot move anywhere, and in that condition we need to apply some force. If it's not happening, just by driving by the strength of the engine, we get out, somebody's pushing, somehow or other we get it out. Similarly, we need to take some steps, some force for this. For many people, meditation helps, and that is very, very powerful. Alongside having some time for yourself, that helps because it helps the mind to unwind, calm down, to be in peace, at least for some time. You gain some strength out of it, and then you can use that mind to distance yourself from the emotions. These are 2 points I can tell. Anything further? Any reflections that you have on this?
This is good. This is good. What I'm finding is scheduling some time to do things you love helps a lot. And you have to schedule it because otherwise you get caught in day-to-day stuff, and that you have to make an effort to dedicate sometimes to things that you love doing. That helps a lot.
That's right. A routine will help. Definitely. It will help us to deal with the mind. Any other points, any questions from anyone?
Gopa, Vineet here. Personally, I think balanced diet, balanced nutritional diet and exercise also helps dealing with emotions. Sometimes we get very overwhelmed with negative emotions and we are caught in that, but I've seen, I do meditation as well. So I do meditation and a day where I'm taking balanced nutritional diet and when I do exercise, a lot of negative emotions I'm able to get away with. So, not all, obviously they come now and then, but then there are a few days where I'm feeling very good about myself. That day I realized that I've taken meals at proper time, I've done exercise, I've done a bit of meditation. So those days really go well compared to other days where all these things haven't have happened.
I usually do yoga. Alongside, I used to go for swimming. I like swimming. And after lockdown, I can't go for swimming. So I added some jogging to my routine. I can see it really helps me as well with my health and overall well-being. Exercise and diet, very important. Thank you for that comment. It's really good.
Thank you, Gopa.
Yes. Any questions?
No, Gopa, I don't have anything. Thanks very much from my side.
All right.
Again,
Thank you. Yes, thank you. right. If you don't have any points, then try to apply these points in your life. Try how it goes. Because it's a constant effort for us to deal with our own mind. Many times, when we are locked down from the externals, we realize more that we had to deal with ourselves. That's where the inner journey starts. We need to anchor ourselves amidst the storm outside. Here it could be lockdown, the financial crisis, maybe. But at the same time, in our lives, many things happen externally. The storms come, then we need to anchor within. That really helps. That's our protection. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all of you for joining. Have a wonderful weekend. And
Thank you very much, Gopa.
Thanks, Gopa.
Thanks, Gopa.
Thank you, Gopa.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.